Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Inspiring Leaders and Leadership. I am Girish Bindal, the Chief Marketing Officer for Advantage Club. And today we have a very special guest. He's an HR leader, he's a consultant, and he's a coach. He's worked for various industries, some of the biggest brands, and some of the most promising startups. So welcome, Sudeep. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Girish.
Great. So let's dive in and let's understand how have your journey been. I want to know a little about your background. What have you done? And how did you get to where you are today?
There's this famous quote by David Bowie saying, I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise you it won't be boring. I think that sort of encapsulates the way I have lived my life and my career in many ways, right? So I have stuck to a core set of principles. I always listen to my instinct. I believe in making my own decisions and my own mistakes, and that's fine. And so I actually started my career much earlier. So I started working along with my graduation. So I did marketing, advertising, a bit of teaching at that time, which was rather unconventional for people of my generation and that age. I decided to do my MBA, specialized in HR, again, something that wasn't that popular at that time, but I really believed that it was HR as a function had truly arrived, and I believe it was the right thing to do. And then, like you said, I've been fortunate enough to work with fantastic organizations over the last 22 years. Excuse me, started with Polaris Software, then moved to Accenture, spent nearly 10 years there doing multiple roles, multiple geographies, just sort of kept putting my hand up, right? Saying, what's next? What do I want to do next? There's an opportunity, let me go and try and solve it. And then things are going brilliantly, but I felt I wanted to get a bit more of business experience, and that's when I switched to FMCG and I joined GSK Consumer in Delhi. That was excellent. I mean, I still remember my first sales visit, my first market visit, my first factory visit. It was just like a new world that opened up for me, right? Spent about 5 years there, again, made another switch to a different industry, into a retail GCC with Walmart Tech. We were just setting up in India, grew that significantly, established that as a brand for the next 4 years. And then again, had the itch to go back into a business space, joined Upstock, spent about a year there, which was fun. And then realized I needed to take a break. My body was telling me, my mind was telling me, I really needed to slow down and take a break. So I did that, took a break, spent a couple of months just chilling and looking after myself. And then started a new phase of my career, which is, doing a bit of consulting, some coaching, some mentoring. So I've thoroughly enjoyed myself on the way. And, my principles have always been about prioritizing the journey over destination. And, that's how I live my life, keeping my, one foot in today, one foot in tomorrow, as an Accenture CEO, Bill Green, used to say, and then just sort of embracing diversity in my career in whatever I do. So, yeah, that's been my story so far.
Superb, sir. I see that you've dabbled in the business. You've been obviously a thorough HR leader, done sales. That's super exciting, and getting a whole 360-degree view of the business, I think definitely helps.
Just to clarify, I didn't do sales. I was the partner for sales. I was part of the sales visit. But yes, I always say that I'm a business leader who specializes in HR. That's the way how I like to think about myself completely.
That's nice. That's nice. So early on when you started and now where you are, what's the one thing that you feel that, somebody would have told you, would have set your career journey on a different trajectory or a speed? Or if you have to go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would you tell now?
Somewhere in the middle of my career, I think I was very caught up, like many people are, around promotions and 6 months and this and that and stuff like that. And I was just spending so much energy and thought on things like that. And I wish, even while there were good mentors and counselors around me, I wish I had the maturity to realize that your career and your life is a marathon and not a sprint. And that's the lesson I think I learned too late in life. I wish I'd appreciated that, because then you would conserve your energy and you would deploy your energy towards more constructive things and not get obsessed by these little milestones and honestly just distractions. So yeah, that's one advice I would give myself, or I wish someone had given me at that time.
So, you're talking about work-life balance, and you also have taken a career break to focus on yourself and then have sprung back into being a leader and a coach now. And, this work-life term is being thrown around a lot these days, but there's a belief that it's just a myth. But how do you personally define work-life balance, and how do you ensure that even when you were the HR head, your employees got a good balance? So how did you manage that?
So you're right. This topic has been the subject of a lot of conversation recently.
Yeah.
And controversial conversation. I do stand with the group of people who do not like the word work-life balance. I do believe fundamentally that if you love your job, then you can be working 10, 12, 14 hours a day and you'll feel good about it. And if you don't like your job, then you might be working 6, 8 hours a day and you won't feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if balance is the right word. I do believe that with remote working, with hybrid working, it's more about work-life integration. And I do believe it's about balancing different aspects of life, because I don't necessarily appreciate the fact that work is something distinct from life, that life happens outside work. Life is happening all the time, right? And there are different aspects to life. So I think one needs to balance it. I find my own ways. I've tried to, physically draw boundaries in my calendar, and make sure that works. I think being open with people around you makes a lot of difference, and people appreciate that. I've been candid with my teams, with my peers, with my bosses, with my stakeholders about how do I prefer to work, and what is the, and what kind of flexibility I need. For example, I'm a texter, I'm an emailer. I'm not so much of a talking person, right? And that makes a difference in the way how you work with people around you, etc. And it makes a difference because the time and bandwidth it takes from you changes depending on what your preferred mode of communication is, and that links to your work-life communication. I think it also makes a very positive impact if you're transparent with people about what your situation is at home, what kind of commitments you have, and just give people heads up about it. So I think it's just sensible to do that. I think at the places I've worked, we've sort of, thankfully, I've always worked in places where leaders believed that, workforces and employees do need to have flexibility, do need to have, find the right balance. And I think creating a culture of trust, honestly, I believe is the right way of going about it. You can put all sorts of mechanisms around it, right? So, for example, one of the things we did is put a lunch hour on the calendar, put a no meeting zone. Some teams did a no meeting Fridays. All these are great things. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm saying these are just sort of process-centric ways of managing things. What we truly need is a cultural shift. And I think that's where it makes sense to build a culture of trust. Or it's a culture of trust that allowed me to take a break after 22 years, but it allowed me to take a break because I felt comfortable enough to share this with people around me, with family, with friends and colleagues, and take a decision to take a break. So I think that culture of trust is super empowering.
Super. And I think these are some fantastic ideas. Let's dive a little deeper into it and maybe, broaden it and understand, what you've practically actually done in your organization and any of your previous organization that you want to talk about on how you have innovated, let's say, the employee engagement programs or recognition programs so that people feel value and they don't feel that there is a work life and there is a home life and we have to balance it. So do you want to talk about anything that you've done in any of your previous organization that you feel, was a good program and people can learn from that?
I think there is one of the things I'm very fond of saying, and I keep sort of repeating that because it's become a mantra in my career, is that HR has to behave like a marketing function. So you have to think about, people as consumers and keep track of trends and make sure that you're actually giving people what they, not just what they want, but what they need, right? And creating that. So I think that's super important. Yeah. So for example, a few years ago, there was this when there was this madness on talent rush, and people were hiring, and everyone was having like 57 offers, and which they were putting up on LinkedIn, right? And there was this entire conversation, and I was with Walmart at that time, and people were putting pressure to say, that company, I don't know which company it was that was giving BMW bikes at the time of offers. All sorts of stuff going on LinkedIn. It was madness. It was fun and madness, right?
Yeah.
I think the decision we took at that time was to go back to people and ask them what they felt they wanted and needed at that time.
Okay.
We did focus group, we had conversations. We actually were fairly transparent with people about sharing the budget and saying, look, this is the pie, right? This is how much the company spends in a year on these various items. Where would you like us to spend on? So one of the great initiatives that came out of that, and then we kind of combined it with a couple of other things that we were doing, is a recognition program that we became like a 360, which people built themselves because we were a bunch of techies, right? So we built it ourselves. We built a fabulous 360 peer-to-peer recognition platform, which saw fantastic usage and made people feel so connected, especially because we were working remotely, and made people feel so connected with each other and did such a great job, right? Way back again in my GSK days, right? I'm so glad that we were one of the first companies to take the first step on truly talking more deeply about inclusion and diversity. And when Women's Day came around, we went beyond, giving roses and doing things like that, but really going a bit deeper, having inclusion conversations, celebrating individuals, which really brought it home to people on what that was about. In both of these kinds of things, right, what I realized is people are searching for a sense of meaning and purpose in their day-to-day work and their lives, right? And one would like to think that people approach jobs in a transactional manner. It's all about money and title, but that's only the starting point, right? You're not going to be spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day on something which is just so transactional. I think any engagement program which make people feel a deeper sense of connection with the ecosystem around them or with each other, I think really truly helps. And I personally believe the best way of doing that is to go and talk to people and figure out what they want.
Super. That's nice. So do you want to talk about any challenges that you faced on the way? How did you overcome them? And, this is more from a perspective that, the future HR leaders want to build out these innovative programs in their organization, but they hit a roadblock many times. They don't get enough buy-ins.
Right.
Are there any challenges that you faced and, our viewers can learn from that?
I think change is always difficult. So I believe that, one of the critical skills that any HR leader needs to build fairly quickly and fairly deeply is the ability to drive change. And going and, for example, proposing for a new innovative engagement program is not change. What is change is that you actually work with the leadership team. You work with your workforce. You work with your HR team and get them to come up with the ideas and come back to you and say, what we need is something completely different. What we need is to drastically change the way we've been doing things. Now help us find the solution, right? So creating the need and bringing that awareness. And I've burnt my fingers plenty of times. There have been times, not just engagement programs, but performance processes, career pathing, right? There was a time in one of my organizations when I was proposing a complete redo of the way we manage careers. And I had completely not taken into account that leaders liked to take ownership and responsibility for careers of people under, in their team. And what I was proposing was people taking accountability for their own career, which was logically the right thing to do, but the change management wasn't really done well. So I actually did something smart finally. I paused it and I didn't push it. And I paused it. And what I did over the next few months is linked it to the fact that we are changing as an organization. And the people were asking for something different. And when people came back and brought out their needs in a much more articulated manner, it's the same leaders who came back to me and said, we need to rethink the way we manage careers. So I mean, number of instances like this that I feel I've made mistakes and then learned along the way. And I think change management is that one skill which I feel we all can do a much better job of as HR leaders.
Superb. I see that you've turned around when things weren't going the way you wanted it, and just pivoted. That's a great quality in a leader.
Well, it's not that great. You just need to do it. You don't have an option, right? You have to be smart enough to pivot. You have to be smart enough to know where to pick your battles.
True.
And come back and then do it the right way. I think more than what you do is doing it the right way. That's more important.
Yeah, I think most people just keep pushing the agenda without realizing that it's right or wrong, and knowing when to stop and when to pivot is a good virtue to have.
Yeah.
Just a quick segue from this. What do you think is a common belief about leadership that you disagree with? So, people think about leadership and they have certain, perspectives. What is that one thing that you disagree in a leadership quality?
In a leadership quality?
Yeah.
I think one, equating leadership with pure technical stroke functional expertise and competence, I think is a mistake that a lot of people tend to make.
Okay.
Leadership is a lot more than that, right? Leadership is a lot more than that. In fact, leadership is a lot of intangible stuff, which even with the best psychometric assessments, it can't be measured. I think people tending to view, assess, sometimes even dismiss leaders at a distance just because they don't meet a certain checklist of certain skills and experiences. I think that's one big notion of leadership that needs to go. And if you look at the greatest organizations and the kind of choices they make in their CEOs, a lot of times, people react with incredulity, especially within things like, how is this person? Like, this person has been brought for this reason or this political reason, etc.
Yeah.
And then you realize leaders play a much, much more significant role than just bringing their functional or technical expertise to the table, right? They have to influence, they have to lead, they have to work with investors, they have to convince the media on many things. They have to carry people along with them. There are just hundreds of things that leaders need to do. So I think viewing leadership through a very narrow prism is one of the biggest mistakes that people tend to make. The other one is really around. I witnessed this firsthand again a couple of days ago, right? In a forum, people were talking about some leaders. वो क्या करता है? वो बस meeting attend करते रहते हैं, and they just attend meeting after meeting. उससे कुछ करने का तो नहीं है. I have to keep resisting and realizing that what leaders actually do is good leaders, I wouldn't say all of them, but good leaders do is really they are pumping water beneath the surface constantly, right? So the meetings, everything are just a front, right? And there's actually a lot of pumping the water going on underneath, like this typical iceberg model.
Yeah.
And you don't see it, and you don't need to see it. It's you just need to see the big ticket sort of results and the needle that the leader moves. You don't need to be seeing all the frenetic activity that goes on behind the scenes. So I think that's another thing that I would dispel the notion on.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with. There are so many things that keep happening and there's so many wheels turning. At the end, you'll have to look at the bigger picture, and the leaders are the one who have to show a bigger picture and look at the bigger picture. So I completely agree. So now that you're a coach and a consultant to many leaders, what do you think is the most important quality in a leader, and not just an HR leader, but because you've been in HR and you must have hired leadership team all across these organizations, what do you think is the most important quality of a leader?
Two actually, humility and agility.
Okay.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of humility and servant leadership in a world like ours where things are changing. where new challenges are thrown at you every single day, and where the ecosystem is constantly upending itself, right? The only way you can get through it is by keeping a head down, uh, truly knowing that you serve something bigger than yourself, the company and its workforce. And then backing it up with the actual ability to constantly reinvent yourself and so on. I'm a huge admirer of leaders who are able to do that, right? And leaders on every spectrum. Leaders, I don't mean just business leaders, but leaders in the political spectrum, leaders, like Dalai Lama, for example, right? Leaders, artistic leaders, right? Look at Madonna, look at Taylor Swift, right? People who are breaking barriers, people who are constantly able to reinvent themselves. It's absolutely amazing. And I think they're able to do that because there is a sense of serving, there's a sense of doing something bigger. There is an acknowledgement that they have a lot to learn. There is acknowledgement and a humility that about their own awareness, about their own self and their strengths and their limitations and what they need to work on. I think this combination of humility and agility is truly what I believe makes a great leader, any function, any industry, any spectrum.
That's very profound. I completely agree with you. So you spoke about a few people that you've admired. Who has been a significant influence on your leadership journey or on your journey, and any learnings that you have had from them and you want to share with us?
I think all the people that I mentioned, I really get inspired, Girish, by so many different people at different stages, right? And my biggest inspiration in my life is actually probably my grandmother, right? Her ability, actually for the same reasons, her ability to evolve and adapt and be very forward-thinking and progressive in her approach is just something I admired, so deeply. I admired so deeply. The women in my life have played a major role, right? My grandmother, my mother, my sister, my friends who, there are people who really reinvented themselves, got into new careers and done brilliantly at that. That makes a big difference. Leaders, like I said, Dalai Lama and others, Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, he exemplifies servant leadership in many ways, right? If you read his articles, if you read his videos, and how he steered the company through such extremely challenging times with such great humility and grace. So, huge inspiration. Books, there's a series called fantasy fiction called, the Mistborn trilogy. It actually is fantastic. It talks about so many things about leadership and journeys, which I completely get inspired by, and the characters I get inspired by. So I just seek inspiration from so many different people, and I just feel very fortunate that I'm able to do that, right? And learn from so many different things that I keep coming across every day.
Superb. That's so nice. Okay, so moving on to my next question, and these are the last two set of questions. I know we are almost inching towards the end line. What do you believe are the key responsibilities for HR leaders in today's evolving world, right? So you've been an HR leader, you've seen so many organizations, you've led so many organizations. Somebody who's stepping into that shoe now, who's going to become an HR leader now, what do you think are their key responsibilities or things that they should keep an eye on and work towards in getting things done?
I'll speak from the perspective of what you said about, people who are sort of either starting or midway in their career, and they're sort of taking on leadership roles. I think 2 or 3 things. The first is, I think, getting the basics right. I hate to say this, but I think it's important to always remember that everything else aside, your first job is to do a good job, right? You have to be damn good at your job. That's number one. So get that right first. I think the second one is what I mentioned earlier, is truly building your capability and skills around driving change, right? That is going to be the single most important job of any HR person in the coming years. Like you said, the world is changing so rapidly. New challenges being thrown at our businesses constantly. And leaders, very rightfully so, will look towards their HR partners to help them and to advise them and coach them on this change journey. So I think how to drive change around you is going to be the second important skill. But to drive that, you need to be able to change yourself. And therefore, that readiness to change, to let go all the things that HR people hold so dear, batch parity, years of experience, right? Performance processes well documented on exactly the right time. I'm not saying these things are not important.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we need to be able to, relook at our holy cows and be ready to sort of shed the baggage and change and evolve along with our businesses. You can't be constantly advising the business to change and reinvent while you don't do it ourselves. So yeah, I think do a fundamentally good job, start with the basics, build your skills in change management, in driving change and managing change, and be ready to reinvent and, change yourself.
Super. My last question is usually around one mantra that you have to share for future HR leaders. I've got so many quotable quotes from you already.
I know there are so many. I've already shared so many. I think I've done given enough pearls of wisdom to.
I know, it's fantastic. My social media team is going to have so much fun because they're going to get so many quotes. And some of them I'm also going to use. But still, if you have to sum up this entire conversation and say, hey, listen, this is one mantra I want, or you want the HR leaders of tomorrow to live by, what would that be?
I think I'm again going to be plagiarize Bill Green, who's one of the ex-CEOs of Accenture. 1 foot in today, 1 foot in tomorrow. I think that's a good mantra to always live by, irrespective of function and irrespective of what part of life you're looking at. But that's a very good mantra to keep in.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was such nice talking to you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you had a great time too.
I did. Thank you so much. Thanks for asking me fun questions and some tough questions. But I really enjoyed myself, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. I hope you found, and whoever is watching this finds it useful.
No, thank you so much. And it's because of leaders like you who open up and share your experience with our viewers that we are able to progress ahead and learn from each other and grow further. So thank you so much. And
next time we'll talk about authenticity.
Oh yes, let's do. We are soon going to come up with season 3 and pick up that as a topic. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks, Girish.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.